Hi and welcome to Conversation Oasis. My name is David Mawby, welcoming you to this free-flowing, free-talk program where we have a number of guests who will be familiar with you today and some who are rather special. Of course, this program comes to you from the Kasviskeidas restaurant here in the centre of Turku. Welcome to the program. Our special guest today is freelance economist Krista Lindholm. Welcome to the program.
Thank you.
A former lecturer at Åbo Academy, author of the book 5 Economic Myths. He's currently a columnist with the Finnish Development Association, and you can read what he has to say about modern trends in economics and politics in such papers as Vasabladet and Österbottens Tidning, just to mention two. Next to him we have our old friend Branko, welcome. And then next to him Jale, who of course is our host here at the restaurant here in Turku. We're also joined by Marko, who has been on the program once before. He's a student of biotechnology. And then of course Anna is holding the technical reins today. Nana is, and then we have of course Ville and yours truly David chairing the discussion. Krista, I'd like to start off with a topical subject for you. We have all read about the Paradise Papers, yet another revelation in the ongoing scandal about tax havens. And for all the pontificating that goes on in the media about just how evil and how pernicious these tax havens are, do you think anything can be done? Is there the will to do anything to get rid of these tax havens?
Well, something has actually been done, and that was after 9/11 when the US found out that the Al-Qaeda had been using some tax havens for its financing. Then the attitude in the US changed somewhat towards these tax havens. So they have been putting pressure on several of these traditional tax havens, from the Cayman Islands to Switzerland, basically to open up and to give out more information, especially about US citizens and US corporations who have assets there. Of course, there is always the problem that you can't really verify whether the information these tax havens give out is complete. Because that's the very definition of a tax haven, is that the bank secrecy is so strict that you can't really verify who has assets there and who hasn't. So basically you have to take their word for it, that the information they give out is complete and correct.
So these whistleblowers that have brought us the Paradise Papers and the ones before us might not have got it right. They may have got their hands on some false documentation.
I wouldn't say that, but I'm pretty sure they haven't got their hands on anything near the whole picture. It's certainly very valuable what they have done, but I'm sure there is much more to be revealed still.
Now, banking institutions and other financial institutions are quick to point out that actually offshore banking and having an account in a so-called tax haven is in itself not illegal. What makes it illegal then?
Well, it becomes illegal if you don't pay taxes on the revenue you get from your offshore assets in your country of residence. I mean, it's perfectly okay for say, a Finnish citizen to have a bank account in Panama if he pays tax on the interest revenues here in Finland. But of course, usually the very point of stashing away your money in Panama or some such places that you don't want to pay tax on the revenues.
This brings on to the point of big business involvement in tax havens. I mean, it seems to me so institutionalized that too many prominent heads would have to roll before anything could be done to get rid of the problem. Anyone want to add on that? Do you want to add on to that?
I can only agree.
You're all nodding.
Well, what is the answer then? I mean, it's nice to read, and I know the Finnish sense of envy comes into play here. That look at what they're doing down the road, this dreadful bank and so on. But I mean, it's so easy to explain the problem. But and you mentioned the fact that the Americans after 9/11 tried very hard to intervene, for instance, in the Cayman Islands. But it seems to me that the upper echelons of society, in politics, in economics, in business, have all got their, to put it in a very colloquial, they've all got their fingers in the till.
Well, I think that's a pretty reasonable assumption. Another problem is that as one tax haven is forced to disclose information, a new one crops up somewhere else in the world. I mean, even such an exotic place as Tibet is nowadays something of a tax haven. It was originally created for the benefit of Chinese enterprises, but now apparently it caters also to foreign investors.
Yeah, if I could say that I personally, well, I have followed some activities of, for example, Finwatch, who tries to, in Finland, to raise these questions, and I've gotten this impression that actually it's pretty like a systematic thing that these tax havens, as you mentioned, if you post something someplace, then another will open. So it's a kind of multi-layer problem in a way. Even if you think about, for example, the global transportation system, most of the ships are under Panama flag or some other flag, and those countries actually also advertise that ships should register under those flags because they have the best tax haven for the ships. So it's kind of like a systematic problem. So I think we are kind of like together allowing it to happen. So it probably needs some systematic solutions also.
So can we talk about the law for a second, like or international treaties and all those structural policies that are involved in upholding this whole system, where shipping companies operate under Panama flags, and where tax haven or where assets can be put into tax havens legally, and what are the mechanisms and policies? Can we stick on that for a moment?
Well, basically it all started with the liberalization of international capital flows starting in the early 1970s.
Right.
I mean, before that, I mean, you needed the permission of the authorities to move money abroad. So if you wanted to stash away your cash in Panama or someplace else, you basically had to fill a suitcase with high value bills and try to get them through the customs and hope that you wouldn't get caught. But nowadays it basically just takes a mouse click or two and you can do it quite legally.
And why is it legal? What laws allows it? Or if let's talk about bookkeeping laws or accounting laws, international accounting laws for a second. There are certain points there, right? If the companies have what is it, branches, fractions in tax havens, they just move over the voitto.
This is their profits. Yeah, they can shift their profits from one to another.
But this is active tax planning, which is practiced by a lot of
aggressive tax planning, and
and
it's quite simple mechanisms used to do that.
Right, so just to take an example, I mean, the Finnish paper industry buys most of its imported pulp from the Netherlands. Now, as you all know, the Netherlands doesn't have very big forests, but what they do have is a very favorable corporate tax system.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, another example on that, on the ship side, is that under Mongolian flag there are many ships registered also.
They don't
yes,
even
the
have a
great
sea
old
line.
shipping nation Mongolia.
And they don't even have a sea line.
Wonderful flag of convenience.
But I think this accounts is not just about putting your money somewhere safe and not announcing it. It's about money laundering too. A lot of black money is going there from big companies and then coming out as white.
Quite true. Because basically, I mean, because they have this strict banking secrecy, these tax havens, they are black boxes. I mean, you can have some idea what's going in there, you can have some idea what's coming out, but what actually happens in there, it's anybody's guess really. Unless you get a whistleblower like we did now with the Panama Papers.
Should we expect like more whistleblowers to come with the current many social media possibilities and maybe the culture of whistleblowing also? What do you think?
I think it's likely to increase, yes, because nowadays it's possible to do it at a lesser personal risk than before.
Especially as the banks are downsizing their staff, and also in the tax havens as well, you're going to get a lot of disgruntled people saying, well, if I'm out of a job, I might as well spill the beans.
Exactly. I mean, that actually happened in Belgium in the 1990s, when I was living there at the time, and there were a few disgruntled workers at a bank in Luxembourg who had sent a list to the Belgian Ministry of Finance disclosing all the Belgian residents who had assets at that particular bank. but for some reason nothing ever happened. And rumor had it that the Belgian Minister of Finance at the time, Philippe Maystadt, was top of the list. So
And
that might explain it.
But this is just it, isn't it? Of course, you get the whistleblower says, "Look, here's the list," but there's always someone there who says, "Oh dear, I know that person," or he or she is a bigwig in politics or in some corporation, and everything is hushed up, and as a result, nothing happens.
I think that's a pretty fair assessment of the situation, because you have basically this unholy alliance between the international business elite and the political elites. And if someone starts rocking the boat...
I think if we have a legislation to protect these whistleblowers, we will have more of these people coming out, with especially those people who are working within the system. They have the information. I think they will feel safe to come out with the information. But we don't have any way to protect them.
Do we know this? I mean, what kind of laws are operating in this when this is coming up? I mean, first of all, what are the laws that allows the bank secrecy? What are the laws that are not protecting, or what are the laws that needs to be implemented in order to protect whistleblowers? What are the changes in policies and laws we need?
Well, I see a contradiction in Finnish practice in this regard. For instance, if you're living on benefits in this country, if you're unemployed for one reason or another, if you're an invalid and you're unemployed and you have to turn to the Kela system, the social security institution of Finland, for money, they have the right to look at your bank account. There's no banking secrecy there. Yeah. But if you're stinking rich, if to pardon the expression, then the banks suddenly shut up. For instance, I know of cases where people who are living on benefits have been approached by the banks to reaffirm their custom. Where are you getting this money from? And it seems to me they pick on the little people because they know that the little people can't afford lawyers to defend themselves. They are the vulnerable. So, and then the banks turn around and say, well, we are asking for information, but from whom? They are asking from the poor.
So you're saying that laws wouldn't help because...
Well, the law, but you see, the law is an ass. Because there's no such thing as banking secrecy.
Yeah.
I'd have to say the law is a whore, actually, because she will sell herself to whoever has the most money.
Yeah. I would also point out that even if we had laws, it doesn't really guarantee safety of whistleblowers, because just recently, I think it was related to Panama Papers. I think was it an Italian reporter who got murdered, who had been involved in Panama Papers. Same goes for other kind of actors also.
In Malta, there was a journalist in Malta. Yes, this is very recent.
And a few years back, I mean, there was this high-ranking European official who was about to reveal some of the financial malpractices within the European Commission and the various EU programs, and he fell out of the window, whether by himself or assisted by someone. It's an open verdict still, but...
Just to remind you, you're listening to Conversation Oasis, coming to you from Radio Robin Hood. We're in the Kasviskeidas restaurant here in the centre of Turku, at least for the moment, as we're talking on the touchy subject of tax havens. And we're joined here by freelance economist Krista Lindholm, also by our regulars, Branko, Jale, our host here, and also by Marko, Nana, Ville, and yours truly, David. We've been discussing tax havens now for 15 minutes, and still we have no idea how to put an end to them. I want to hear some ideas on this. Within the framework of the law, is it ever possible to turn to, say, a sovereign entity like the Cayman Islands, or even to an offshore entity like Jersey or Guernsey or the Virgin Islands, and say, you've got to stop this or else? I mean, if we can impose sanctions on North Korea for being the naughty boy on the block, then surely we can impose sanctions on the Cayman Islands and the Virgin Islands. It would seem to me, in theory, to be easy, but why not?
Well, actually, what the US did under the Obama administration was they passed a law allowing a 30% penalty tax on any transactions between the United States and tax havens who don't agree to full disclosure of information.
So
Now 30% on every single transaction, that's a pretty strong incentive.
Yes.
Yeah, that's
But
good.
that's-
Yeah,
But was it carried out in practice?
it has been carried out, yes.
So
At least during the Obama administration. What's
So the
happened to it now?
the law
well,
could
that's-
work.
It could
if,
work,
if
yes.
we would have politicians that would be willing to implement such laws or to
Which brings the discussion nicely to the home front, doesn't it?
yeah,
Why?
back to our government.
Why all of us here, as I look out under the snowy northern dark sky, does this not happen in Finland?
That's a very good question.
And the answer?
Well, let's say I'm going to give you the standard excuse that we can't really do anything because we are in the European Union and they sort of
Okay.
set all the rules,
Yes,
so we
fair.
can't do anything on our own.
Well, why can't the European Union do anything? I accept the fact that we have our hands tied here in Finland and in all the or in any other of the 27. No, Britain's leaving. Yes, 27. Get my maths right.
Leaving, yeah.
Yeah, well, they're going to form their own tax haven. You know, London, which is already a tax haven, but that's another subject, isn't it? Why can't the European Union? Why is there a lack of political will to do this, or are the politicians in bed with those who are guilty?
Well, the very simple answer is that any decisions concerning taxes or common rules for taxation, it's among those decisions that require anonymity in the Council of Ministers. Now, since there are quite a few tax havens within the European Union, then it's fairly obvious that we're not going to get that anonymity that would be needed to pass such laws or directives. I mean, we have Luxembourg, then we have several other countries who are basically corporate tax havens like Ireland or the Netherlands.
Could we possibly then consider that maybe there would be a need for a law that would require some more transparency from the politicians, from themselves? I've been thinking about it. If you're a politician and you go to decide upon our common society things, and then at the same time you can carry like invisible stocks case.
One problem is also the lobby legislation in Finland. That actually some corruption is legal in Finland. To put it straight, in the business world, it's a normal legal practice that you can't move from one company to another just like that if it's the same branch. If you're high up enough.
Yeah.
But as a politician, you can do like Laura Räty did. First, she's pushing for the sote reform, and then she moves over to, was it Terveystalo or Mehiläinen? Or are they the same?
Or if you're the head of the EU, Mario Suarez, you can become a member of the board of Goldman Sachs within 2 or 3 weeks.
Yes, and the former partner of Goldman Sachs can go and lead the European Central Bank. So there's really a revolving door there between the business sector.
Shouldn't we then have laws that would regulate this kind of actions?
Yeah, there's a lot of laws that needs to be, but I will bring up one thing that has been annoying me since the last period. Like Anna-Maja Henriksson, she was the Minister of Justice the last period. And when they brought up this lobby legislation, that something has to be done about this. We can't have legal corruption around here. She was like, well, we have more important matters, or more urgent legislative matters that we have to deal with. And then the thing was forgotten. I didn't forget, but I was like, hey, I think that was a smooth way to say, I'm not gonna do shit about this.
And the fun thing is, whenever you talk about politicians or top civil servants and they talk about imposing this sort of restrictions on their switching over to the private sector, then the standard argument is that, but you can't prevent people from searching for a new job. But that's precisely what you can do when it comes down to ordinary employees.
Exactly.
You can have to wait up to 2 years before you can get another job in the same sector.
We already have this logic operating in our legislative system.
Yeah, but then again, as we know, some animals are more equal than others.
And on that point, I've got to bring in Branko, because you're a local left-wing activist. Some politicians are more equal than others. What's your take on this whole subject?
Well, there's a lot to say about politics and politicians, but I also think there's a lot to say about the attitude of people in general, because it reflects the whole political situation, like I've said before. I remember when this scandal when the Panama Papers and particularly Nordea, where there were many people who changed their accounts to other banks. But there's also where many people who just like didn't care, or they just said that, well, you can't do anything about the situation. No matter if I change my account or not, then there's no bank that there's no proper bank. All banks are there's corrupt, and sure, the people recognize this problem within politicians or within the banks, that they recognize the problem that it is corrupt, but it's just accepted, and it's just corrupt and we can't do anything, and it doesn't matter if I change my bank account or not. And then that's like we just accept these problems and we don't do anything.
It has been normalized in a sense.
Exactly. And politics.
And even if I might say, I mean, the former leader of your party, Susanne Siimes, who has now gone over to the dark side, I mean, she's actually been defending the tax havens quite actively.
I think we need some basis for that, Krista. I mean, is this the case? Come on, we've got two people here who are...
Don't associate me with
No, you can't wash your hands of it. I mean, after all, this, the person in question was leader of the party to which
Not
you're
when I joined.
affiliate. Yeah, that's double.
That was before her time.
What kind of soap are you using? I mean, Franco.
You don't want to know.
I recognize that, like any political party, there's problems in the left party too, and there's problems in certain people. And I have to say, personally, I'm quite new in the left party. Like, this is my 2 years that I have been like officially engaged in left party, so I don't even know this person. But so I can't say much about her.
And I can also say, like, to put myself in a little bit better light. I have not been a party member very long myself, but I'm already trying to clean out there, like the corrupted tendencies there that I've seen. I've been pretty kind of persistent on this topic in there. They don't like, some people in there don't like me, and some people really like me because of this particular tendency.
Yeah, I can see it, but it just. But for the one around the table who's got grey hair, let me just say this: it all seems to me that this is nothing more than an exceptional example of human greed and human nature, basically. And we all know that greed is one of the 7 deadly sins. So come on,
I want to counter a little bit on that, because I think you're partially right, but I think this is more like a good example how it's a systematic problem. It's like if you compare it to a board game, say, let's say Monopoly, the board game. You have certain set of rules. You have a certain set of rules. It doesn't matter if you're right or leftist. When you start to play that game and you're going good in it, then that's what's going to happen. So we have to think about the board, not who to blame. We have to plan the system differently from each square of the board. So that it will be in the system to prevent that you won't switch to a corporation and you won't get Panama investments. So that's my take.
Marco, your take on this?
I'm just enjoying the conversation at the moment. I'll maybe throw a few comments.
Well, we're running out of time, so now is the time.
You better use the time.
You better use those moments, because I have a feeling that you are the voice of the people in this. This has been the voice of the panel. You're the guest. So, what was your immediate reaction when you once again heard that this ongoing scandal, courtesy of the Panama Papers? What was your reaction?
Could you elaborate a bit on that?
Well, just what do you think of it? What would you do? How would you solve this problem?
How would I solve it?
Yeah.
Good question.
Biotechnology?
Biotechnology, probably, yeah.
So, do you think it's in human nature? Do you think greed is in human nature?
Yeah, I think it's a manifestation of the greed.
Yeah.
And do you think it's in human nature, because you are the scientist around this table now? So, and
I haven't really studied human psychology.
In behavioral sciences, there is actually some quite solid results to prove that it's not in our nature, or only up to a point. That, I mean, most people, once they have their basic needs satisfied, plus a little bit extra, they tend to be okay with that and settle for it.
Yeah, I agree.
I think answer to your question, how we can put the end to it, it's not possible to put the end. It's kind of evolving system to get better and better. But the first step is with politicians, definitely, because they are the one who are inspecting, they are making the law and legislation. So they are the one who has to be clean first. And also to be taken that right from them to have any promised job by corporation after the retirement or after the government.
Can I ask an inappropriate question, Jalal?
Yeah.
Like, you're from a country where corruption is kind of, a little bit more normal.
It's one of the worst country in corruption in the world. Yeah.
So
We're talking about Iran, folks.
yeah. So what do you think? Well, like, how does it become part of human mind and nature? Like, not nature as in genes or stuff, but like part of our thinking, our philosophy, our life, how we picture life.
We have less corruption here, according to the numbers, than most of the world.
You mean Finland?
And, in Finland or Nordic countries. And the reason, I think, is the financial security we have provided for people and citizens. More people are growing in poorness and they are devastated by the financial problem. I think in the adulthood they are more keen to secure their financial thing first.
And that's where I think we're going to have to leave it, and I can't help but thinking it would be a good idea if politicians would set an example. But what makes me think that we've got a very long time, the way things are going, for that to happen? This has been Conversation Oasis, which came to you from Kasviskeidas here in the centre of Turku. I'm sure we're going to continue on this subject again in the future. Thanks to our guest, Krista Lindholm, freelance economist here in Turku, and also to our regulars, Branko, Jalem, also to Marco and to Nana and to Ville. This is David Mawby. Hoping you've enjoyed this discussion and that it's given you some food for thought, and that you'll join us again at the same time next week for another edition of Conversation Oasis. Until then, bye.
Bye-bye.